latest book is Adios America, the left's plan to turn our country into a third world hellhole. She's on to us. Ann Coulter's over here. Ann Coulter. That's not bad applause, considering.
That's right.
Okay, well, thank you as always for coming into the Lion's Den. I know you know they're predisposed not to like what you're going to say. And tonight, they're really not gonna like what you say. You wrote a book about immigration.
Yes.
And you know we're gonna get to you very soon. Because I asked if you would mind if we booked the congressman with you, and you're okay with that.
I said fantastic.
Fantastic. Okay, you have an honest disagreement. So it's good publicity that Donald Trump was sort of saying what you were saying.
Yes.
Mexicans, rapists, beheading.
Yes.
But what I find odd is that you say in the book over and over that it's very hard to get facts, to get actual stats, and yet you come to conclusions like they're rapists.
Well, I described that in the chapter. This wasn't going to be the original book. This was, immigration was just going to be a couple of chapters. And then when the information wasn't there, it drove me crazy. For one thing, I go through how the information is being hidden, both by the government and by the media. But there are ancillary facts. For example, as you can see in that chapter, New York State keeps a list of prisoners by nationality, and there it is. You have 1,000 Dominicans, you have 1 Dane, and he's probably a Muslim. We have the most wanted list.
But we're not on the border with Denmark. There are less Danes here.
Well, but we don't need to take people just because they're on our border. We didn't used to take people just because they live within walking distance. We used to have an immigration policy where we would choose the best in the world, and that was changed. This is a fairly recent policy.
We would choose the whitest in the world. That's
your audience. No, we wouldn't, but look, the pre-1970 immigrants were more educated, made more money, were more likely to buy houses, and 30% of them went home. Now no one goes home. They go on welfare, and they are far more likely to be on welfare than the native population. I think a nation's policies should be concerned with the people already here, and that includes the immigrants who came last year and the year before. It should be people who live here benefit, not to become the, battered woman's shelter of the world, where we're bringing in the hardest cases and, the wife beaters and the single mother with 8 kids.
Again, how do we? But again, I don't feel these assertions are borne out by stats, because they have stats from different governmental departments. Like you say, there are actually 30 million illegals, whereas every other department I can find
Well, they're all using
12.
the same number, though. They're going by the census figures. So if you take the census figures, it doesn't matter who looks at the census figures. They're going to give you the same number. It's been 11 million for a decade. And I explain in the book where that number comes from, and I think it comes from a more reliable source.
But where do you get from 12 to 30?
I'll be happy to explain it. I think it's easier to read. It was a couple of Bear Stearns analysts, and they said this
Bear Stearns? That's a financial group, isn't it?
Why, yes, it is, and advising something about something more important than some dumb census report, their money. So they said, look, this is crazy. People who have trekked thousands of miles, left their families behind, broken laws, stolen Social Security cards, are not going to be filling out government surveys. And in fact, California did a survey in Hispanic communities asking out here, are you illegal? Did you fill out the survey? There was a backup survey and only 40% answered that survey. So it's silly to think that we're getting honest answers here. So what the Bear Stearns analysts looked at was remittances to Mexico. They looked at school enrollments. They looked at housing permits, and they came to the conclusion that it was 20 million. That was back in 2005. Then the 2 famous Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, Bartlett and Steele, very famous for Time magazine and you can look up, they have their own Wikipedia page just themselves. They spent a year investigating it, and they said, we're getting 3 million a year. So my 30 million estimate, that was in 2006. My 30 million estimate is a very low estimate. Let's say it was only 1 million a year since 2005. The minimum.
Surprised I'm not Hispanic.
I know.
Well, okay, so I mean, I've read everywhere that actually the net immigration from Mexico in the last 7 years has been zero, because our economy got worse, theirs got better. Mexican women used to have 7 children, and now they have 2. I think that would make a big difference. So let's say everything you say is true, which it isn't.
Well, let's say it isn't. That's not... Okay, your snotty little mark aside, it's irrelevant.
Okay.
The point at issue is, should America's immigration policy be used to benefit the people already here, or should it be benefiting Pakistani pushcart operators, illiterate in their own language, never mind ours, who come here, go on welfare, commit terrorism, engage in crimes?
All right,
why wouldn't you look out across the world like a sports team does and try to get the creme de la creme? Not like this audience. We don't want these people. We want the creme de la creme. We want to up the average. Up the average.
You gotta give it to her. She ain't afraid. You gotta give her that.
But she's also wrong.
Okay. Now,
she's also wrong.
What's the rebuttal?
Look, 30 million, 12 million.
Big difference.
I would just say one thing. Worry about the 50 million Latinos in the United States of America that are here legally. Worry about that 50 million who care, and who care deeply, because of many of the people that you refer to as murderers and rapists and criminals and people that are on welfare are their aunts, their uncles, their classmates, they work with them. These are people they care about. So what I think that Ann Coulter is actually doing, along with Donald Trump, is that they're just revving up. You know, it's like a Latino registration machine. Because every time they say these things, now I say this quite seriously, 1 million Latinos turn 18 every year in the United States of America, and they're all American citizens of the United States.
And 4 million
here's what
whites
happens.
do.
And here's what happens. They become the basis of the new American coalition, the new American political coalition, that is young people, that is Latinos, that is immigrants, it's African Americans, it's Asians, it's gay people, it's people that care about the economy, and it's people that care about the environment. And look, you're never going to take the White House with this kind of politics ever again, because there's a new American
All right. But that didn't exactly answer her question.
Can I attempt to answer
Yes.
your question, Ms. Coulter? Because I think one of the things that we have to do in this country is to stop lying. We were earlier talking and touched on the issue of slavery. Ever since the forcible removal of millions of African Americans from chattel slavery, this country has been importing new slave labor.
That's right.
Because this country wants and runs and is fueled by cheap labor.
That's
whether it was
right.
Puerto Ricans, whether it was people we drew from Mexico to come here and continue to do so, because the people who are on your side, big agriculture.
Not my side,
big
but I agree.
agriculture, the big corporate interests who want people to come.
Well, she does say that.
I agree with you.
Okay, well, once we bring people here, people's family members, people whose families are born here, are American. Both my parents are immigrants. So I take great exception to any kind of negative characterization of them. I had one come from Africa, my mother came from the Caribbean. When they came here, they came for the same reason that everyone does, for opportunity, for education. And when they're contributing to our society and they have a child here, like me, I'm a first-generation American, and I'm fully American, despite the fact that both my parents were born outside of this country.
That also doesn't answer my point, though it buttresses one of the main points I am making. Yeah, this is cheap labor, and particularly...
But then why isn't the book called Thugs?
Well...
How corporate Republicans are decimating the middle class.
How long do I have to wait? Technically stupid.
Okay.
In fact, as I told Scott, that's the one error in the book, the title. I didn't argue. You haven't read the book.
I've read it 3 times.
But I'll tell you what's in it.
On the plane, in the hot tub, once high, once straight.
It is far more of an attack on Republicans, on big business, on the Chamber of Commerce than it is on the left.
I agree.
I didn't want to subject at all, but if I listed all the people who are trying to turn our country into a third world hellhole, it would go on to the back page.
Let me ask you something personal.
Look, the question is still... I'm
but
glad you're here, but why should America care that other people of the world are happy? They should care about the ones who are here now, including you.
And all the
Okay.
fruit you eat, all the vegetables you eat, they are all picked by foreign labor.
They can be picked by machines. These are all people going to be on welfare soon. Yes, there are machines that can now pick strawberries.
No, you cannot
strawberries,
pick them.
tomatoes, and you don't have to pay them
They are not
Social
today
Security.
picked by machines.
You don't.
And
That's
they're
because
picked by
because
people
they're
who come to this
corporates.
country with their families.
Okay,
all right,
eat their
corporations are
food.
lazy.
All right,
Okay,
you know
the
what?
answer
Enjoy their
is.
food, but
All right.
you will
Okay,
not
that's the
recognize the
question.
justice
The
of their
answer
labor.
is you
Are
can
benefiting.
mechanize
It's
all of
Americans
this.
We're not gonna. You know what? This
I
is
knew I'd
over.
be talked
'cause-
over and I couldn't answer.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to talk over each other.
Okay,
That's
and the
all we do
answer
on
is-
this show. Sorry.
Okay, I'll take.
So I will take over. And I'll just ask you 2 more questions, and then we'll get on to the Pope. 1, Geraldo's your great friend. Is he okay with this book?
Yes, I said something very nice about the Puerto Ricans. They made our country more vibrant.
Okay. All right.
I pointed it out to him.
All right. And also.
So we didn't, in other words, we
You're-
didn't need 30 million Mexicans. We already had African Americans, and I mean African Americans, not immigrants, and we already had the Puerto Ricans.
And what about?
I'm just stating
what
we
about-
didn't need the 1965 Act for all this vibrancy
Okay.
we're getting, because we're getting a lot of crime
and what
and
about
welfare use.
your imaginary friend, Jesus Christ? What? I mean, would he be okay with this attitude about the?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You don't have
All
to
right.
take homeless people to sleep in your bed to prove you're a Christian. This is our home.
Seems like he would like that. Okay.